All right, good evening, everybody. We are thrilled to have you here with us tonight. My name is Rachel Crocker, and I'm the director here at the Albany County Public Library. I've been doing this, I'm going to do it at the beginning. I'm going to take a little privilege of having this moment before I jump into my actual introduction, to invite you all to join us on Saturday for a really amazing party. You can see the start of that party up there, where Fabian Hernandez has sketched an outline that our community can then help fill in. If you don't like coloring in the lines, you will then be welcome to choose one of the cinder blocks and just leave your mark on the wall. All of these will they will hang out until we start construction, and then eventually in the course of construction, they will live here forever. They will just be hidden under drywall. So you really will get to leave your mark on the building. But if you haven't heard, we're super thrilled. We recently received a $2.5 million federal grant to renovate all of our public spaces. We're hoping it'll be an amazing tool for the community, as we love being a community gathering spot, and this will make even more opportunities for organizations to use our space. So super thrilled about that, using my opportunity to invite you to join us on Saturday. Anytime between 10 and 3, you can come and paint away. All right. Now that I've used this moment for my commercial, truly we are pleased to have you here. I always like to share the Albany County Public Library's mission, which is to build meaningful connections, inspire growth, cultivate curiosity, and enhance community. And we think partnering with the League of Women Voters to host these candidate forums is a really great way to do all of those things. So we're so glad to welcome you in the room. Hopefully we have a few people maybe joining us online on our live stream, and I'm confident, based on views from past videos, that we will have many people joining us at a future time to watch and learn about the candidates. So just a couple simple reminders. As you can tell, we got some pretty decent mics. You don't need to eat the mic, but please do make sure that the mic is capturing your voice, because that's what's going to get it to our friends online. That's the one small thing for you. Otherwise, candidates, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for running. We appreciate the service that you give our community by running. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Lynn and the League of Women Voters.
Oh, good. That was going to be my first remark. Let's give her a hand. I'm the local president, or I'm the league of this. I'm the president of this local league. There are six local leagues in the state of Wyoming. So if you get confused between our league and the league, there is a state league that we're all affiliated with. But this is the local league. We are the biggest. Fremont County is catching up fast, so if anybody is interested in becoming a member, we would thank you and welcome you. And you don't have to do what we do. You can just do some little task or just be a member. At this point, I'd like to invite up here anybody who is running for an office other than this one, who is sitting in an office that was elected, or on a board or a commission that was appointed. Come up here and introduce yourself, because the audience can't see you back there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie V. Hill, and I'm running for City Council in Ward 2. Happy to be here, and we'll see you next week.
Good evening. My name is Brett Glass, and I am also running for City Council in Ward 2.
Good evening. My name is Will Bowling, and I am running for City Council in Ward 1, and I will see you next week.
I'm Gary Crum, and I'm a candidate for State Senate District 10.
Good evening, I'm Janice Marshall. I am a current school board trustee, and thankfully I am not up for re-election this year.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Matthews, and I'm your current county assessor.
And something I've said in some of the forums is that, you know, in the past years, the league all over the state, we rely on our local libraries or schools. But now it's official. At the national level, the League of Women Voters and the ALA, which is the American Library Association, have teamed together on all things voting. So we're officially partners. And you'll hear about it here in Wyoming, I'm sure, in a couple of cycles. But anyway, at the national level, it's being celebrated. Let me tell you about the questions. One, we live and die by the questions that, you know, you give us. Nonetheless, we prepared a handout, and if you don't have one, I'll come around and give you one. And what's on here is inspired by a sheriff candidate from a cycle before. He wanted to know, what are all the questions that have been asked of a sheriff? Okay, he was going to answer them on his website. This is a selected set of questions, but people have found it interesting and useful. It tells you the kinds of things that a candidate for a certain office is expected to know or expected to be able to answer. Anyway, on this one, we have first the primary voter guide. You've seen that. That was the insert for the primary. The voter guide questions for the general election, and that voter guide is coming out on the 12th of October. Now, you can always go to 411, just type in vote411.org, and you type in your address, and you can go in and read what everybody has said in response to our questions. Now, the other questions that are on here, I put on all the questions that were asked in the forum during the primary, and then, you know, a dozen or so more that were asked in previous cycles. So that's yours to keep. Now, what about the questions? You've got, or you can see from where you sit, a pencil or a pen and pads of paper, right? And on those pads, or on your own if you brought it from home, please give us a question. You want to hold up your question so far? We may not get to them because look at that. Anyway, when you frame your questions, remember, this is a friendly forum, and we don't use questions that are directed at a single person. We don't use questions that are too inflammatory. I think we try to use questions that differentiate one candidate from the other, or at least tell us something we'd like to know that that they feel or plan to act on. All right, so what else? Do not record, please. As you can tell, it's being live featured on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube for the library site, on the League of Women Voters site, and on public TV, channel 191. And the man who does that just wrote to us today, I think, and said, we're up to date. So you can use that too if you don't use computers very much. Timekeepers. Our usual timekeeper, Jamie Egolf, is not here tonight. She probably will be here next week. She fell in her backyard, and if you've been here before, you know she was limping already. Anyway, instead of Jamie, we have my partner, Al Tremblay, and next to him is Matthew Link, and Matthew has done, you know, half the timing before. One of you want to hold up not the stop, something else. All right, now that 60 seconds means there are 60 seconds left. We count down, and there is 30 seconds left. You get 90 seconds on most of the questions. I think that's just about it. We'll wrap up with some dates, and I will read to you about this wonderful volunteer over here who's coming. So this is Carrie Bennett. She's a facilitator and a mediator in private practice. She moved to Laramie in 2017, loves the community here, and has vowed never to leave. Outside of work, Carrie wrangles 2 young sons and an unruly garden. She is also on the board of Common Outdoor Ground, a local nonprofit that organizes volunteer projects on public lands in southeast Wyoming. And if you go and look at what they're doing, I looked 2 years ago, it's so much better now. Anyway, so I give you Carrie, back by popular demand.
I'm so delighted to be here. As a mediator and facilitator, I don't get to be very politically active, so this is a way that I can come out and be involved in this like really neutral, unbiased, like let's just have a good conversation sort of way. So it's a real pleasure. I appreciate it. It's my job today to help us have a meaningful conversation about the issues that are most important to us. You all know the challenges that we face are complex, and it's wonderful to have this rich mix of voices and ideas who are poised and willing to tackle them. So thank you for your willingness to run for office and your thoughtfulness in addressing the questions. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves first. You'll have 60 seconds to do so. Love to hear who you are, what's your connection to our community, right? And what is it that compels you? You can plead insanity at this point. No, I'm just kidding. What is it that compels you? Why do you run for office? Not why should people vote for you? You'll have plenty of time for that. But what is it that's calling you to run for office? Why do this thing? All right. We're going to start with Ken. Keep your time on the timekeeper, and we'll just move down the line. I will be rotating who gets to go first on questions. But Ken, I'll have you start us off for that first round of introductions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Carrie. My name is Ken Chestek. I'm running for House District 13. I'm the incumbent in House District 13. And I am a semi-retired professor of law at the University of Wyoming College of Law. I retired from full-time teaching last year, but I flunked that, so I'm now back teaching a course this semester because I can't get, once you get teaching, I can't get it out of your blood. I love teaching. And now I get to teach and not do committee work or faculty meetings or anything else. Why do I get involved in this? My mom never taught me the meaning of the word no. So when I see something that needs to be done, I step up and do it because I think it has to be done. And I saw a need in our community to have some rational voices in the legislature that could bring fresh points of view and there was an opportunity to serve House District 13, and here I am.
Thank you. Go ahead, Trey.
Can you hear me? Wonderful. I'm Trey Sherwood, and this summer I celebrated 20 years in Laradise. This is the community that I chose to call home. My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved all around the United States. So this is where I've chosen to plant my feet. For the last 13 and a half years, I have been the director of a nonprofit, Laramie Main Street Alliance, and we provide economic development services and community building activities in our historic district. And the reason I am running for re-election to continue to serve my community is something I learned in Leadership Wyoming. My personal mission statement is, I can make a difference. And so similar to what Ken said, I just feel that giving back is in my blood. And when I see an individual in our community struggling or a community struggling with lack of access or resources, I just want to get up there and roll up my sleeves and do the work on behalf of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is, no, not Joe. I have Joe on my list. Joe, you're not next. Paul, go ahead, Paul.
Yes, my name's Paul Crouch, and I'm running for House District 45. And I've had this question come up as I knock on doors, and it's come up a couple times when I talk to the people there, and it's usually people that has kids. And by the end of the conversation, I realize that's why I'm running for office, is because of my kids. And yeah, so.
Thank you. And Karlee.
Hi, I'm Karlee Provenza. I am your current representative for House District 45. I sometimes like to start with my ancestors who were union organizers in a coal mine that survived machine gun fire from the Rockefellers. But my family has, I'm running for office in part because I'm a young person in Wyoming and I care deeply about this state and the ability of young people to stay here and for them to raise a family, for them to have access to childcare, for them to have access to quality education, and the services that a lot of people in Wyoming have found really important for themselves. I came here a little over 10 years ago to get my PhD, which I received from the University of Wyoming in psychology and law, and that has helped me in my term in the legislature serving on House Education and House Judiciary, two topics that I'm greatly appreciative that I get to serve in. So I'm grateful to be your representative. I thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. I'm madly sorting the questions up here. You guys are so good. I usually come up with some questions just in case the audience doesn't come through for me, and I do not have that problem, so thank you. Please keep passing them up. If you just hold them up, one of the volunteers will bring them up and I will add them to the mix. I will apologize in advance. We won't get to all of them. I'm looking to see where there's themes and common interests from folks, and also trying to kind of gather some of them under an umbrella of common concerns. So just know if I don't read your question exactly as written, it's probably because I'm combining it with 3 other people's questions, so we can get as much information as possible. So starting down the line, Trey, you're going to get the first go. Where shall we start? Taxation is not a popular thing, right? Nobody likes taxes, and people do appreciate the services it pays for. So if you could revise Wyoming's system of taxation, thinking about property taxes, sales taxes, all of the whole mix of things where revenue comes from, what would you do? We'll talk spending later.
Thank you. All of our favorite topic, taxes. So this is something that the legislature is grappling with today. Our tax structure is complex and lopsided. We are very reliant on the mineral industry. And as our energy needs change, we will still be an energy leader, but those are changing. We need to diversify our tax structure in a way that is transparent, is equitable, making sure that we're not overtaxing, that we are collecting from the populace what we need to provide those essential services. What would I change? I'd really like to get down in the weeds on all of the exemptions that are on the books right now. As an economic developer, these are tools that we often use to entice businesses to come into the state, but some of those exemptions have been on the book for decades and are no longer doing what they initially were meant to do, so some of those can go away. Thank you.
All right, same question. We're just going to keep going down the line. I can repeat them if you need, but Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I would kind of rephrase the question in the fact that we should probably look at what our wants and needs are for our expenditures first. And once we have that, we can understand what type of taxation we need to put in place. We also need to take a look at, how long we want to keep for a rainy day fund. Do we need to cover a year? Do we need to cover 2 years worth of revenues? Because Wyoming has taxations where, it's a boom and bust with the mineral industry. So we just need to be able to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Karlee, same question to you.
Thank you. Yeah, tax isn't a popular thing except when people are able to have it on their local ballots and they get to vote in their community for the services that they want. And oftentimes you see in Wyoming that people do vote for revenue streams. I think one of the things that we need to look at specifically is how are we giving towns and counties the ability to raise their own revenues so that they can provide the services that the people in their communities need. Oftentimes people who are closest to the problem or closest to the solution, and so having the ability to kind of allow towns and counties to make their own decisions is really important to me. Additionally, as Trey had mentioned, exemptions, there's a ton of them in our statute books. And we need to consider what should we be giving exemptions to, and it should have, in my opinion, a public good. If you're giving it an exemption for taxes, but there's no public benefit to that, and we see that it's not bringing businesses in, I think we need to reconsider, is that worth the tax break that we're giving? And then I think, additionally, we also are going to have to find new ways to raise revenues because the boom and bust cycle is going to hurt us. Right now we're in a boom, that's great. But what happens when we're in a bust? We need more stable revenue streams. I believe that we need to have corporate income taxes for large businesses. They receive a lot of services and they need to also pay their fair share here in Wyoming. And then I think we need to look at some other revenue streams. Thanks.
Thank you, Karlee. I meant to say, don't make me get the shepherd's hook out, and you did a great job stopping when you saw that sign. Thank you. Ken, same question to you. What would you change about our tax structure and all the ways?
Thank you, Carrie. I want to first agree with Trey and Karlee about diversification and looking at the exemptions. That's a good thing. I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction here. What would I change? I would vote yes on the constitutional amendment that's on the ballot, and I would encourage everybody else to vote yes on it too. There's a constitutional amendment to the Wyoming Constitution on the ballot in September, or in November, which will allow us to create a fourth category of taxable property, residential property. Right now, residential property is taxed in the same way and with the same caps as commercial property and other types of property, and trying to carve out relief for residential property owners is very difficult to do because we can't carve out residential property. We have to do the same thing for commercial and other property that we might not want to give the same breaks to. So passing the Constitution Amendment that's on the ballot in November will give us the opportunity to create a special category for residential properties, and then we can target some relief for residential property owners. We did, in the last session, pass a 4% provision that said real estate taxes cannot go up more than 4% in a year, and I think that was good because when we have inflation in real estate prices that are more than 4%, that would create a cap. That was a good thing to do, and we need to keep that in place.
Thank you. All right, this next question is we're going to start with Paul. You all are running for State House, so in a different level of our governance than, say, our city council or our county commissioners. How do you view the relationship between those and the separation of those? We always get questions about home rule. Right now, we have the hot topic in Laramie with the rental, whatever it's called. Sorry, I don't remember the name of it. Thank you. The rental ordinance. That was the word I couldn't remember. And state level action that may question that. So could you just explain to folks your view of, you can address home rule specifically, or just the relationship between local government and state government and how you envision managing that tension?
Yeah, I think that the state legislature needs to work with the county commissioners and
just make sure you're facing them. Sorry, I want to make sure that they see you.
the city, the state, the county commissioners and city council members. But anytime there is, in any government situation, anytime there is money given to the county or the city, there are strings attached. You know, we see this at the federal level, and when we take money from the federal government, there's strings attached. When we take, and it's the same thing with the county. So,
thank you. Karlee, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I support the block grant model in terms of the state providing funds to our towns and counties so that they can make decisions about how they spend that fund. I think when we attach strings to that, we're not serving some of our rural counties the same way that we might serve our more urban counties. And so it's really important that they have autonomy in making those decisions. But I think in terms of the broader discussion about how we work together, we need to solve big problems. There are big problems in this state right now. We have an affordable housing crisis where people cannot find a place that they can afford to buy a home. They can't potentially raise their families here. There are things that we need to work on together, and that requires anyone, and for housing, city council makes a lot of decisions with that the legislature can't. So in those cases, how can legislators work with city council members or county commission? I think that's critically important. And so I don't know what we should, I don't think we should be fighting about anything. I think really the state's role should be how do we support the people at home who, again, are closest to the problems and closest to the solutions.
Thank you. Ken, same question to you.
As Karlee suggests, there are certain issues that require a uniform decision across the whole state. We all need to be on the same page. There are other issues, and these are a large number of these, and probably some of the more important issues, that different counties and different municipalities, different school districts might craft different solutions to. And in those kinds of issues, the government closest to the people is the best government. And home rule is a way of accomplishing that. When I was in practice of law back in Pennsylvania before I moved to Wyoming, I was actually the attorney for a county government that was a home rule charter county, which basically means the idea of home rule is that all power starts with the people. In a non-home rule situation, all power resides with the state. The state then delegates some of its authority down to the local governments, but a home rule is the opposite. The people have the power. They can do anything at all that they want that's not denied to them by the state. And that empowers local control, and I'm very much in favor of empowering local control, especially on issues that don't require a statewide solution. I practiced law and represented a county that had that power, and so I know that the model works very well, and I would advocate for expanding home rule in Wyoming.
Thank you. Trey, go ahead.
Thank you. I am a big believer in local control. You guys know how to solve your problems, and it's our job to stay out of your way and not meddle. And we've seen over the years that when the legislature tries to craft a one-size-fits-all solution for the entire state, we usually make a mess of it, and it becomes a game of favorites, which is not transparent or fair to our constituents. And so, yes, while there should be statewide standards for things like roads and road safety and education, our legislature should not meddle and override the needs and wants of our local residents. We all have a shared responsibility to work hard together and to play our part. And this includes knowing when not to meddle. We want to work together to build strong communities and recognize that as individuals who have the freedom to make their own decisions about what is best for your life as an individual and your family's lives, it should be the same that we honor local government and our homegrown leaders when they are serving our communities. They should be the ones to create policies that better our quality of life at the local level, and the legislature should provide tools to empower that. Thank you.
Thank you. It is so hard to choose from all these good questions. Karlee, we're going to send the next one to you. Thinking about schools and an area where there is both the local control of the school districts, but also very much tied to funding that comes from the state. What's your view on school choice and how funding follows the student or not? And if you have any concerns about government funds funding religious organizations, religious schools. It's quagmire. Sorry. There's a lot in there. School funding, school choice. What do you think?
There's a lot in there, but they're all really connected. In terms of school choice, I support parents having the ability to choose an education that fits their child, but not at the expense of state dollars. if parents want to send their children to colloquial schools or religious schools, it should not be the state's purview to spend money on that child to be able to do that. It is in our Wyoming state constitution that we do not give funds to religious entities. So I believe very strongly in that separation of church and state, and we need to continue that. As far as charter schools, they cost the state more than $13 million a year in administrative fees. I think that is an unnecessary cost. If folks want to send their kids to a school outside of public school, again, I support them, but it shouldn't be the state that foots the bill. We are currently not spending enough money on our K through 12 education, and that is why the Wyoming Education Association and the Albany County School District are suing the state legislature, because we are failing to pay for the quality education that we have promised through our state constitution. So in terms of, I think I answered all of that, but we need to fund public schools. We need to pay our teachers. We need to increase our pay for our teachers. There's a reason why we are seeing a decrease in the number of people who are willing to teach, and it is because we do not value our public educators enough, and we need to do better.
Thank you. And just to remind you, the question is about school choice and funding following to different schools. Also, you used your time just fine. I just want to remind people of the initial question. Go ahead.
Thank you. School, in the not too distant past, Wyoming had one of the best K through 12 school systems in the country. It was a model for the country. And that's largely because the Wyoming Constitution puts a high priority on public education and requires the state to fund it and have small class sizes, and we've done a great job. We've slipped behind because of funding issues, as Karlee mentioned. We are not funding them at the level they should in the past. In fact, that's why the lawsuit is pending. The lawsuit is based on the Wyoming Constitution mandate for adequate funding and small class sizes. And we're falling behind. So we need to fix that by increasing funding. Does that funding follow the student? Not into parochial schools, not into religious schools, because there's another provision of the Wyoming and the U.S. Constitution separating the church and state. We don't want public dollars going to fund religious education, and therefore I am not in favor of funding parochial schools or church-related schools with public dollars at all. Those public dollars need to stay with the public school system, where you can get a good education and a good if you want to give your children a religious education, you can either pay for it or you can do it in your church. Or there's other ways of getting that education to your student, but don't make the taxpayers pay for your or anybody's private religious beliefs.
Thank you. Trey, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a topic that has been number one at the doors, that a lot of my constituents are concerned about how we fund public education and what these things do to potentially erode that. So when we're talking about school choice, I'm going to translate that into, yes, every family and every child should have access to a school that accommodates their learning style. But I don't see that there's anything wrong with thinking that our public schools can accommodate that need. And so my goddaughters, one of them needed a lot of structure and a lot of very strict instruction throughout her day, and the other was a free spirit and needed flexibility and opportunity to run around. Both of them had that experience at public schools here in Albany County. So school choice, learning styles, yes. Money following the student, I will reiterate what my colleague said. I am against public dollars following a student into a church, because what comes with funding is purse strings. And when we talk about the separation of church and state, we may say today our society and our legislature respects that, but what happens when that's not the case? And you have a legislature funding and mandating to our churches what they're supposed to teach. That is a huge red flag, and I'd rather us address that now than get into the middle and having to try to separate these funding structures out of our religious institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. Paul, go ahead.
Our kids learn differently. I've got 4 kids, and each of them learn differently. The first one was a voracious reader. The second one wanted to get into the arts. The third one wanted to take apart anything. Anytime if I threw away a toaster, he wanted to take it apart to figure out how it was put together. And my fourth one is just a flower child, It's okay, so we've got to figure out ways to teach differently to these different types of students. The one-size-fits-all model is not working, and we're losing students to homeschooling. It's happening. Parents want options, and we should be able to give them to them. I was talking to one person that was very concerned about the school choice options, and I didn't get a chance to tell him, because he stopped listening at some point, that the school choice is for the low-income students, because Governor Gordon signed and vetoed it for only the low-income people.
Thank you, Paul. We're going to stick on the theme of education for one more question, and then we'll see if we can have time to circle back. I'm going to have Ken start. I think it's your turn to go first.
I haven't started.
Oh, you haven't started? I thought you did that one.
Just to be fair.
Did you just do that one?
I think
Wait,
you did. Yeah,
I
you
did?
Yeah, you did.
I'm sorry, I'm delusional.
That's okay. I have a very sophisticated tally system here, and sometimes I mess up myself.
You're doing better
But
than
don't add to it. Thank you. I'm gonna have Ken go first, and then after this round, I'm gonna switch directions, right? So that who's following who isn't always the same. But it's coming. It's going to get more complicated. All right. So there's a lot of hot conversation. Is this still working? I feel like I've got quieter. Okay. There's a lot of hot conversation about books and content, both in libraries and in school districts. What classifies something as pornographic versus freedom of expression, et cetera. We aren't going to resolve that conflict tonight, but what do you see as your role as state legislators in weighing in on those types of issues and both protecting children from things they shouldn't be exposed to and also that freedom of expression and seeing different types of lifestyles presented in their media? Ken, go ahead.
Thank you. To me, the answer is we have to let the educators and the librarians do their jobs. They are the ones who are the curators of the collection, and they're the ones who decide what content is appropriate for the collection and where it goes and who can have access to it. But they make choices based on the First Amendment and based on a reverence for knowledge. And my view is that more knowledge is better. If a parent wants to control or to monitor what their child is consuming, that's up to the parent to do that. And the parent has the right to do that. That's perfectly fine. But that parent should not tell another parent that I think this material is inappropriate, therefore your child can't see it. That is inappropriate. Those are family decisions. And I think the materials should be widely available, and I trust the educators, I trust the librarians on making good choices and allowing the parents to control what happens in their house, but not to control what happens in other people's houses.
Thank you, Trey. Go ahead.
Ken, well said. Yes, this is a hot topic. Some might say this is a headline-grabbing topic, but one appropriate to have here at the public library. I have heard librarians say when patrons come to the table and say, I don't like this book, why is this here? Well, families in the community requested it. Somebody checked it out last week, so are you going to impede on a parent's right to choose what their child can read or be exposed to. So again, what Ken said, I think, is really valid, that this is about parental freedom and the individual's freedom to choose what they read, and our neighbors should not impede that freedom by asking that a library book be removed. I think our librarians are more than qualified to curate collections that reflect the needs and values of our communities.
Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
If you can't read that book in a public forum, it's our responsibility to protect the innocence of our children. And that's the responsibility of the parents to protect the innocence of the children. It's the responsibility of the legislature. It's the responsibility of the librarian to protect the innocence of the children. And until we start doing that, you know, a lot of the books, you know, children get their information from various sources, and parents have to monitor their TV, their phone usage, and it's going to be an important issue. And, you know, we think about all the times where we have gun violence and other things. They're getting it from these other sources. Because when I grew up, you know, everybody had a knife in their pocket. You know, you had a gun in the back of your pickup truck. Okay, so these examples have to be controlled, and the parents need to be responsible for that.
Thank you, Paul. Karlee, go ahead.
Thanks. Let librarians do their jobs. They're doing a great job. Let teachers do their jobs. They're doing a great job. Let parents play an active role in their child's lives and the values that they want to instill in their children. And then, you know, if in the rare event that someone crosses a line, which I don't think there's evidence of, let the justice system do the job that it has. The current law that we have, I think, is doing a good job of protecting librarians, teachers, and kids. But let's be honest, this whole conversation and the current outrage about librarians and teachers, let's be honest about what that is. That's fabricated rhetoric that has been created to drive vitriol and divisiveness between people. I trust our librarians and I trust our teachers and I trust the parents of Wyoming to make the best decisions for their children. Part of the role of government is to also make sure that we're protecting our freedom. Our freedom to read freely is one of those.
Thank you. Trey, I think you're starting on this next one. You all have to keep me on track now. Karlee's got me all off kilter.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. We're doing it.
It's my fault.
We had some other questions. Recognizing that last question is deeply tied to different values that folks hold dear. So I have a question about what is your guiding light, whether that's religion, some philosophy, your dogs, counseling, I don't know what it is. But what is your guiding light that really drives the beliefs that you have? And, if I may, when you feel caught in a hard decision, do you believe that it's your right or that you need to vote your conscience, or should you be bound by what your constituents would ask for, right? Do you follow your internal own guiding light if that is in conflict with your constituents? How do you manage that tension? Don't worry, 90 seconds, just reconcile that. If you could, Trey, you're up first. Go ahead.
That was beautiful. So yeah, whoever concocted that, thank
Genius.
you.
Genius.
Very much. So I am a liberal Lutheran. I rely on my faith to ground me, but I also rely on my community to ground me. I do not believe that what I learn and believe in the church pews should dictate how I vote. How I vote should be based on the needs of my constituents. And so if I'm ever struggling with an issue, I remember the conversations at the door. I look at those phone calls, those texts. I look at what vote creates the greatest good for the greatest number of people in my community. And if I'm struggling with that, I can pray. I can sit and take a moment. I can remember my favorite Bible verse or something my pastor said. But at the end of the day, it is about service to the individuals who live in this community. And that's what I'm going to put first. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, same question to you.
So I'm a conservative Lutheran. Okay, so one of my favorite verses is Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to walk humbly with your God. Okay, and so one of the unique things in Wyoming is that I can knock on every door in the district that's going to vote. And that's what I'm attempting to do. And so it's important to me to understand where my constituents are on all these issues that come up in the state legislature. And I can't do that without meeting with them and them opening the door. If you have one of these bookmarks, then that means I've talked to you at your door. Okay? I can't promise a lot in the future on legislation that's going to get passed, but one thing I can promise, that I will have town halls before and after the session legislature, and I'll find out what you guys think, what my people in the district think. And I want to know, and I want to sit down with people, even if we don't agree. And we're not going to agree on all the issues. I want to know, I want to hear your voice, I want to see if I can convince you.
Thank you, Paul. Go ahead, Karlee.
Thank you. My guiding light is my community, first and foremost. I've been deeply invested in this community since I've been here. And I think that speaks for itself. Actually, one of the first times I met Paul, I met him at the legislature. He was there as a constituent, but also in this room when I hosted a community discussion about renters' rights. And I made myself available to the people that had questions about what were their rights as renters. Last night, I helped a community talk about how they were going to process some of the concerns they had about the University of Wyoming, and I facilitated a meeting from 7 to 9 p.m. in my community because I care about the people of my district and in any capacity that I serve, whether that's as a legislator, whether that's as a neighbor, whether that's as a community organizer, in any way that I can. I often just find myself wanting to dump my love into my community. And that's the other thing that guides me, is my values. And I think that's what voters want to know. You know, we're not going to talk about every single policy that's going to come up because there's hundreds of bills, but they want to know, what do I care about? I care about the dignity of all people. I care about that you have access to a doctor, that you have the freedom to be able to go to a doctor, to get the education that you care about. And so I've had those difficult votes where sometimes I'm the lone no vote. And I think my district trusts me in that because they know that I care about them.
Thank you. Ken, same question to you.
Thank you. This is a great question. So we're owning up to our religious path, our spiritual paths. I'm a Unitarian, and we have 7 principles. I'm not going to recite them all, but the first one is the one that is probably the most important, that guides me the most. And our first principle of Unitarianism is that every person, every human, has inherent worth and dignity. That's our very first principle. And that, I think, informs everything else that I do as a legislator, how I decide things and how I make decisions. I always want to look for the answer that does the most good for the most people and the most people who need help. I think it is the job of the government to create a level playing field so that every person who has inherent worth and dignity can achieve their best selves. They can do what guides them, what they want to do, what motivates them, and have the freedom to do that, free from governmental interference. Does my vote protect people from harm? Does it lift them up? Does it create a level playing field? That's how I decide my votes on most issues, and there it is.
Thank you. Paul, we're going to toss you the next question. This is one that I don't think there are biblical instructions for, so regardless of your denomination, this is just going to be your expression of values in other ways. Oh, I'm sorry, switching timekeepers. Take your time. Timekeepers, their fingers get tired resetting that timer over and over, so make sure you're paying attention now to Matt, right? All right. Wildlife management and all of its complexities, yes? Wyoming is a state with a strong tradition of rich and abundant wildlife and also rich and abundant, well, I don't know if rich, abundant ranching, right? And coyotes and wolves are a tricky aspect of this. We had multiple questions asking about snowmobiles and coyotes, and what do you think about that? Now that we've gotten your religious, perspectives,
yeah.
What do you do with coyotes and snowmobiling and management, et cetera?
Yeah, I never heard about this question. I thought, what is this all about? Okay, so, and then I knocked on a door, and one of the ladies directly asked me that question. And I said, I have no idea, but here's my principle.
Do you have an idea now?
But here's my principle, okay? We, as citizens, we have the right to bear arms, okay? And so we need to protect our families, our homes, our property, our livestock, okay? So I don't support running down an animal with a snowmobile, okay? But I've shot many of pests on our property, and that's where I'm at on the subject.
Thank you. Karlee?
So we asked this question in the last debate. I see Gary laughing back there. I part of my childhood and my younger life, I worked on a ranch that my great uncle owned. There were 3,000 acres at 9,000 feet elevation. We had predators, we had livestock. And when predators come around, you have the opportunity to use your Second Amendment right and shoot them if you need to protect your livestock. If you're chasing something down with a snowmobile, I question if they're attacking your livestock anymore. Are you chasing them in circles around your cows? The argument has been that this is how we can take care of predators. That doesn't make sense to me. I think if you're having to deal with a predator, there's better means and more humane ways to do that. And Wyoming's wildlife is our heritage here. Our big open spaces, our wildlife are things that we value deeply in this state. And so we need to conserve them for future generations. Needlessly killing animals for sport, for fun, which, quite frankly, let's be honest, that's what chasing an animal down with a snowmobile is, I guess, supposed to be, is fun. I disagree. So, no, I don't support, is it yoke whacking is the term that they've used, unfortunately. I do not support that.
Thank you, Karlee. Ken?
Thank you. So you're going to make me dig back into my 7 principles here. One of which, the 7th of which, is that we Unitarians respect the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. And so are coyotes, and so are wolves, and so are humans. We're all part of an interdependent web of existence. And that doesn't mean that humans can't kill animals if you need to kill an animal for food, to feed your family. Under certain circumstances, it's perfectly legitimate to go hunting, go deer hunting and eat the venison. That's fine. I have no problem with any of that. But killing them just for fun, just because I got a big, powerful snowmobile and it's fun to go racing around and see if I can nail something with it, that's not respect for the interdependent web. That's abusing your power as a alpha predator. And I therefore am very much opposed to this coyote, goat whacking, whatever they call it. Apparently it's a sport. They do it for fun. And it's horrible. And I am absolutely not in favor of it.
Thank you. Trey?
Thank you. First, I believe that our Game and Fish Department does an incredible job of using science to manage our wildlife resources. And when they come before us and testify in the legislature, that voice should carry a lot of weight and consideration as we think about the management of our wildlife and of our predators. Personally, I am absolutely disgusted by what happened to start this conversation. It's something that is internally disturbing to think about the needless suffering of any animal okay. But going back to values and going back to that balance between our faith and our individual beliefs and the needs of our communities. I represent all of Albany County, not just those who live in the city of Laramie, not just those who live in Rock River. I have ranchers in Garrett, Wyoming. I have ranchers who live 2.5 hours north of here. I need to be mindful and respectful of what tools they need to manage their ranch and the juxtaposition of the wildlife predators passing through and the needs of our cows, which feed us, right? And so I have a landowner that shot a wolf, but she shot the wolf because it was less than 50 yards from their house where their kids were playing. I think that's a very different scenario. And it was a heart shot. That animal did not suffer, right? So when I go to vote on this issue, it will be challenging.
I know I haven't done my job if everybody agrees, but it seems we are pro-predator control, anti-snowmobile riding to do it. Bummer. I thought I was going to get more diverse opinions. Sorry, no, just kidding. Let's talk about affordable housing. Karlee, I think you're up first on this one. Many decisions that affect the cost of housing happen at many other levels. But what do you see as the opportunities that the state legislature can take to make housing more affordable?
Thank you for the question. It's an important one. And I think it's a complicated answer, and I think it's going to look different for a lot of different areas, which is why I support providing a affordable housing trust or something that the state legislature can say, we're going to put our money behind this trust that allows for our cities and our counties to apply for funding so that they can come up with inventive solutions to this problem. I think that there's a lot of different things that folks know work in other states, but Wyoming is really kind of its own thing, right? We certainly, my values are in how can we ensure that people have safe housing, affordable housing, and when they are renters, how can we also take care of them? So I think it's going to, I don't know exactly what the solution is, particularly across the state. I think that the city of Laramie has done some good measures in terms of allowing for mother-in-law homes and things of that nature and changing some of the city code. But what it lacks is incentives to be able to help people do that. How can people, right now people can't afford to build a second house in their backyard to help other people have a place to live. So we need to think about what are some incentives that we can provide. And I think the state legislature can help that because we have severely restricted how cities and counties can raise their own money. Additionally, I think in places where we've talked about mobile homes, that issue becomes even more complicated, and maybe we need to look at, do counties and cities need to own properties so they can rent them out at cost?
Thank you, Karlee. We're staying in the same order. Ken, go ahead.
Thank you, Karlee, or thank you, Carrie. And also, Karlee, I agree with everything Karlee just said. It's a very complex issue with no single solution. There's no silver bullet to this. One thing that I think the main one of the reasons that housing is so expensive is that the infrastructure you need to support a house is expensive, and in order to build affordable housing, you need the infrastructure, and that costs a lot of money. Trey is leading a great support group or a study group to try and figure out how to create more affordable housing in Laramie. And we had a presentation at our last meeting a few weeks ago about how infrastructure affects the cost of housing. And the way to bring that cost down is density. If you have a certain fixed cost to put in the sewers, the roads, the water, the electricity, all the infrastructure that you don't even think about, and it costs X to do that. And if you spread that cost out over a few lots, those lots get really expensive. So you have to put more units in and have a higher density. Whether the density comes from the mother-in-law homes or the accessory buildings, those kinds of things, that can help. But in order to allow that to occur, it goes back to one of my earlier questions, and that is home rule. Can we enact home rule for local municipalities that would give them more power to do the creative things that are needed to allow for higher density and lower cost housing?
Thank you. Go ahead, Trey.
As an economic developer, this is the issue that I am most passionate about working on our community's behalf and our state's behalf. A lack of attainable housing for people who want to come here, start families, start a new career, folks that want to stay and retire and be close to those grandkids. This issue of housing is shrinking our economy and our potential to have strong communities. And so I'm so excited to go and continue to represent you and continue to work on housing issues at the state level. I was able to get funding for unmet housing needs passed. There's a $5 million grant program that will open up here towards the end of the year where local governments can apply to fund road, water, sewer, that infrastructure that adds so much to the cost of adding housing in our community. So that's a program I want to continue to fund and continue to monitor. But one thing I find really odd is that we have a Wyoming Community Development Authority. It's essentially our statewide housing authority. They're a state agency that has never received state funding. That is so bizarre to me. They've managed our federal money for HUD, but they don't have any incentives through the state to offer first-time home buyers, loans or discounted interest rates, or to help with these things like infrastructure. So that's definitely a resource that I want to strengthen and empower so that we can find local solutions to provide attainable housing for every one of our residents.
Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
One of the great things about knocking on doors, especially in Laramie, is you've got professors here. Okay? And one of the professors is an economic professor, and he says, well, you just need to build more. There's not enough supply. If you had more supply, then, you would have lower cost housing. Okay? But think about the type of housing you need. We can't just keep building large lot size houses. There needs to be smaller lot size houses for those starter homes. When you first come out of college, you're going to rent, and then you're going to move into a starter home, and then you're going to move up, and then maybe someday you'll have that dream home that you're looking for with the large lot size. So we can't build all those large lot sizes. The other thing is we need to lower the regulation. I knocked on one door, and the guy was a plumber, and he said, I work in Fort Collins because the regulations up here in Laramie are crazy. I knocked on another door, and the guy said his shower broke, and he couldn't get a plumber for 2 weeks. So we need to fix this lower regulations. I'm not talking about eliminating regulations.
Thank you. All right, we're going to switch orders now, but Karlee, since you just went first, I'm going to give it to Paul. messing everybody up. Paul, you just touched on government regulation. What do you see as the role of government in supporting business here and economic development? And if you can include in that thinking about regulation or conflict between regulatory agencies, et cetera. So what's the role of state government in supporting businesses? And what do you see as the government's role in managing that level of regulation?
Yeah, so large corporations can manage through, they can hire the lawyers to work through all the regulations that come up in a city, county, or state level, okay? But we need to simplify our regulations. You know, what comes to mind is when I go in and get a haircut, I don't ask for the license of the person giving me the haircut. If they give me a bad haircut, I don't go to them anymore. So I think we need to have a system where we can have referrals, and the neighbors need to refer other people. Like if you need a plumber, ask your neighbor, ask one of your constituents.
Thank you. Trey, go ahead.
I believe the role of government at all levels should be to remove barriers to entrepreneurs. So we have amazingly creative people living in our communities with passionate ideas of how to problem solve. And when they go to open a business, the role of government should be to empower them, to steward them, to champion them, not to throw barriers in their way. And so I have run as an economic developer. I'm running continually to think about how to right-size our tools, the economic development tools that are coming out of the Wyoming Business Council. How do we make sure that those are usable and valid for a business of 2 and a business of 100? And so that's something I'm passionate about, is tweaking those programs. But when it comes to regulation, what is the role of government? It's also to make sure that we're safe. So when we get to things that maybe become a barrier, but protect public safety, like fire suppression systems. Like, we all would appreciate knowing that if this building caught on fire, there was a suppression system that would allow us to get out safely. So while that is a regulation, that's a life, health, safety regulation that I would never want to chip away at, I also believe in carrots and in the government offering incentives to help businesses reach those life safety goals. So again, remove the barrier, offer an incentive to do what is right for the community. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you. I agree with Trey, and this is her field, so I follow Trey's lead on a lot of stuff because she does a great job here. My view of government role in encouraging business is to be a facilitator. We're not going to be picking winners and losers. We're not going to say this business thrives, that one doesn't. We're going to give everybody equal opportunity, the level playing field I was talking about earlier. And you do that with seed money. You have investment trusts. You have low-cost capital, loan programs that you can borrow money to get going at low interest rates. The government can supply infrastructure. Because we talked again about low-cost housing, low-cost businesses need the same infrastructure too, and the government owns a lot of the infrastructure anyway, and we need to find ways to build the infrastructure that's necessary to allow businesses to thrive. Create incubators. We have business parks that we can put the infrastructure there, create the property, and make it available for new businesses to start up. Again, we're facilitating the creation of business. We are not directing how the business is going to be run or what it's going to do, but we facilitate it, and that's, I think, the main role of government.
Thank you. Karlee, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think, the role of government, what I've supported small businesses in, is providing grant funding, providing help with startups. But I think the thing that's missing from this conversation is that we often hear that businesses can't find workers. And part of the reason why they can't find workers is because we have a state that doesn't foster a place for people to want to live and work in. We don't have access to childcare that will help us keep young families here. These are young people that can stay in the workforce. We haven't expanded Medicaid, which means that we have a very high cost of healthcare in this state. And we've heard from businesses across the state that expanding Medicaid would help with their costs of healthcare, keep their workforce healthy so that they can stay at work. We don't have paid family leave. So these are things that drive a workforce here so that larger businesses would want to work here because they have people that can actually work at them. But there's just a big conversation missing. That is, how do we support the hardworking people of Wyoming so that they can keep our businesses thriving? And that's what I'm more invested in. I absolutely support small businesses. I want to make sure that they can succeed in Wyoming, but oftentimes we hear time after time that it is because there are not people there that can work for them. So we need to make sure that we support trades, that we support education opportunities for those things as well, and training.
Thank you. Trey, you get the first go at this one. I'm still kind of new here, but I understand that Wyoming has a long tradition of pragmatic problem solving in the legislature. More recently, though, it's been much more divisive and perhaps folks focusing more on national issues that may be less relevant to Wyoming. If elected, how would you work with your colleagues to keep the focus on Wyoming issues and deal with those factions that have arisen in the legislature?
Thank you. That's a very thoughtful question. I believe that civility is a key leadership tool. Listening and learning about those who you serve with is how the work gets done. And so understanding what motivates my colleagues, why they decided to run, what they were hearing from their community that they want to problem solve around, and then building commonality around shared values. So sometimes it just starts with like, hey, your dog is really cute, and what about those grandkids? And then you sit down over coffee and a meal, and you get to know your colleagues. And when that happens, when you're having true dialogue and you're seeing the humanity in each other, we can get to the root of our problems. We can cut through the national dialogue, we can set aside the headlines, we can treat each other with kindness and respect, and we can do the good work that our communities deserve from us. Thank you.
Ken, go ahead.
So you've gotten me started on my UU principles, and there's another one I want to bring up here. And that's
Y'all didn't know you were going to get a Unitarian sermon tonight, but go ahead.
And that one is the fourth principle, that every individual is responsible for their own responsible search for truth and meaning, which basically says critical thinking. Everybody needs to think for themselves. And that is probably my favorite principle. I'm a critical thinker. I teach critical thinking. And critical thinking to me means you listen to what others have to say, but you analyze it, think about it, criticize it, see if you agree with it or not, respectfully challenge and have respectful conversations with each other, and learn from each other. And that's what I think we lack sometimes in the legislature. There's a certain group of legislators that do seem to be focused on national issues. They take their take guidance from a national organization, and they don't think about is this really something that is important in Wyoming or not. And I would like to have a responsible conversation with those people to try and explore why they think this is a problem in Wyoming, and how can we solve the Wyoming problem. And if it's not a Wyoming problem, why are we talking about it? So the critical thinking piece, I think we need to, I'm willing to do it, and I hope my colleagues will engage with me on that.
Thank you, Ken. Karlee, go ahead.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I can't control my colleagues and the bills they bring and the issues that they raise, but I often engage with them. I call many of them my friends, even some that I staunchly disagree with on many different issues across, honestly, all party lines. One of the, I think one example that I can give of what I've done to try and keep things focused on Wyoming is just continue to bring issue to Wyoming problems that are occurring. So Recently, the UW Lab School has been a concern, and I helped lead an effort to get all of the Albany County delegation to try and address that issue, and that was what many would call a tripartisan effort. So it's just, how can we find the issues or like the self-interest? What is it that is in your community that you want to solve? I think everybody at the end of the day wants what's best for our communities. We want what's best for our neighbors. No one disagrees on that. We disagree on how we get there. So whether it's bringing amendments to bills that maybe are about hot button topic issues to make them more focused on Wyoming, or just continuing to say this isn't a Wyoming problem is an important thing, because ultimately only a quarter of Wyoming eligible voters voted this last election, and I think that's why we have a legislature that is not focused on Wyoming problems. They are unfortunately working for people that are operating somewhere else.
Thank you, Karlee. Paul, I think, it's back. You're the last one on this one. Thank you. Go ahead.
I don't see a whole lot of national issues that get brought up in the legislature. We can all work together on it. As I'm walking through the neighborhood, I'm just shocked at, the way our streets are here in Laramie. You look at, somebody put in a handicap sidewalk to be able to ramp into the street, and then the street is cut, and there's no way you could get a wheelchair across that street. We need to repair our roads and streets and keep things in Wyoming. So,
Thank you, Paul. Ken, I'm going to toss this next question to you. What are your views on climate change and what Wyoming should be doing to prepare for, address, combat, whatever, in alignment with your beliefs on climate change?
Thank you. Back to the interdependent web of existence here. Absolutely, climate change is real. It is happening. I believe humans contribute to it. I'm not sure they're the only cause, but they contribute significantly to it. Human activity is a significant contributor to climate change, and even if it's not the sole cause of it, if we can change our human behavior to stop making it worse, we need to stop making it worse. How do we do that? Alternative energies, renewable energies. We need to stop putting carbon in the air. And we do tend to put a lot of carbon in the air when we mine coal and when we use fossil fuels. Those can be bridge fuels until we get to a more sustainable source of energy. What are sustainable sources of energy? Wind, solar, geothermal. Those are sustainable. Do we have those in abundance in Wyoming? Of course we do. Of course we do. We need to develop the renewable energy sources, and it's not that we kill the economy and throw away jobs. We create new jobs. It's going to take human effort to harvest the sun and the wind and the geothermal. So we're creating new jobs, and don't use coal to burn, use coal to build stuff. Make coal bricks, make graphene, make things to build with out of coal. Thank you.
Thank you. Karlee, go ahead.
Thank you. I think we need to stop wasting money on lawsuits that shake our fist at the federal government over some of these concerns. Oftentimes we're losing, and this is something that is determined by a market. It's determined by something much greater than just the state of Wyoming. So I think that's one place to start, because it's our reliance on our fossil fuels to pay our bills that is part of that problem. We need to diversify our funds so we can have a more honest discussion about what our energy profile should look like. I think additionally, we need to support climate resilience work. I serve on the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund Committee, where we fund projects across the state that help things like wildlife migration and mule deer corridors, but it also helps with like plant diversification and plant life and the ecosystem that exists that is really beneficial for being able to deal with the carbon. It's a complicated process, I guess I won't bore you with, but it's something that scientists support, and I think it's really important. But ultimately, we have to get away from fossil fuels. The evidence is clear, science is clear. We need to find a different way to either produce energy or reduce our energy load. I'm a young person. I want my children to live in a world that has the same wildlife and natural spaces that we have, and unfortunately, climate change is going to impact that dramatically.
Thanks, Karlee. Paul, same question to you.
The weather changes all the time. Okay? Anytime there's a volcano in the world, we get more snow. And then things warm back up. And then things cool down. The weather changes. The only way we're going to stop using coal is when we find a newer energy source that's cheaper than coal. If we don't sell the coal to China, then they'll get it from somewhere else. And it'll probably be dirtier than the Wyoming coal that we have. So we should burn the clean coal that we have here in Wyoming. We should have the university do research in new opportunities on how to transmit electricity. Think about the telecommunications industry. We used to string wires across the United States for telegraphs. Now everything's wireless. Why can't we do that with electronic transmissions? If we could solve that, you could put your solar panels in space.
Thank you. Trey, go ahead.
Has anyone noticed how hot it's been this week? And now I'm sitting here freezing, by the way. So yes, climate change is real. So conservation of our natural resources is a shared value in Wyoming across, I think, all party affiliations. We appreciate that we have clean coal, but we also appreciate that we have clean water. And I think maybe besides the fact that we're so fiscally reliant on our mineral industries, I think it's fear of change that's holding us back. If we're gonna be honest with each other, I think we are afraid of change. And instead of embracing the very smart, hardworking people that we have in our communities, at the university, the School of Energy Resources, and leaning into that innovation and doing it just all in. We're gonna be all in on the work that the School of Energy Resources is doing. So they are making bricks that we can use to build attainable housing out of coal without having to burn it. They're making road base so that our WYDOT folks can have easy access to Wyoming asphalt at a lower cost than they're getting it now. And they're doing that with coal without burning it. So we're still utilizing our natural resources without adding to climate change. I think that's brilliant, and it's super exciting. I think we all need to be talking more about the amazing minds at the university and our community colleges and on the ground who are working to still use our resources in a smarter way.
Thank you. Ken, I think you went first on that, yeah? All right, Karlee, this is our last round of questions, and I apologize, there are still so many that we aren't going to be able to get to, so this is our last round, and then I have a few closing tidbits before we wrap up. We know that elections are managed on the county level, but under the guidance of the Secretary of State, and of course in congruence with all of our state laws that govern them. Would you support any type of election reform in Wyoming, and what would that look like? You can talk about switching party rules, the sore loser rule, I don't know what that is, or any other aspect of elections. Go ahead.
I think that what we need to do is make it easier for people to vote. Fortunately, we have same-day voter registration in this state, which I think is incredible, and we need to hold on to that. But people should be able to vote in the primary that they choose. More than 80% of Wyoming's elections are decided in the primary election. Why should people not get to have a voice in who their elected officials are? I think we need to reverse the law that made it so that you had to change your party affiliation by May 15th. As we saw, we had terrible voter turnout this time. Terrible voter turnout tells me that we have a problem with our election process or that we've confused our voters. I have ran budget amendments that helped fund our county clerks so that we could do voter education because people just aren't necessarily up to date on what those changes are. Unfortunately, that didn't pass in our last budget, but it did have a broad support and just came out in the conference committee. But we need to, I think Wyoming's one of only a handful of states, if any, that doesn't allow online voter registration. I don't know why we don't trust our voters. I think we should trust our voters. So we just need to let people vote. I mean, it's a right. We should allow them to do so. I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know how we could disagree on that.
Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
People don't vote because they're busy. You know, everybody in this room cares, and they want to vote. I knock on doors all the time, and sometimes I get the comment, "Oh, I'm in your district?" Okay? And then there's other people that, you know, they don't even want to talk to you, okay, because they're busy with life. I was busy with life when I was raising my kids. I love the idea of in-person early voting. I don't like the idea of the drop boxes. There needs to be, take a look at the drop boxes, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Trey, go ahead.
Could I have some audience participation, and can we all give a warm round of applause for our county clerks and the work that they do in our state? Woo, woo, woo.
It's such a hard job.
It is. They are amazing, and they work their tails off. Election reform. So what I've heard at the door, there was an independent who said, I'm disenfranchised. I can't even vote in Wyoming's primary. We have removed the ability of independents in our community, their right to vote. We all should be livid about that. So open primaries so that everyone has access to the polls. I would love for us to go back to multi-member districts. Margaret Brown is here in the room, and she served in the legislature when this was still a thing. And guess what? We had more women, we had more diverse voices, we had more people of different age categories. When I ran for re-election, I didn't realize until after I won, I was the first woman and the first Democrat to be in my seat since 1990. Guess what year we got rid of the multi-districts? 1990. I think that it should be easy to register to vote when you go to get your driver's license, and easy peasy, you can do both at the same time. And yeah, my goddaughters keep asking me, why can't I register to vote online? I'm on my phone all the time. This is where I get my information. This is how I interact with the world. It should be easy to register to vote and make sure that, yes, we're busy. Everyone is so busy, and so just, we all need counseling. And so we should make it as easy as possible to vote, because life is crazy. We should be working to increase, not limit, voter access.
Thank you, Trey. Ken, go ahead.
Thank you for the question, and you're going to allow me to sneak in one more of my principles. And that is that we respect the use of the democratic process in all of our daily lives and in society. And this is a passion of mine. I've been working on election reform and trying to do a better job with democracy in our country since before I got in the legislature. I found a group called Wyoming Promise, where we're working on trying to get money out of politics and try and reduce the effects of dark money and unaccountable money. So I've been working on that. I've been having bills in the legislature, which we're getting close to passing. I think we might get across the finish line this time. But I want to just say that the first bill I introduced as a freshman legislator 2 years ago was to remove the Department of Elections from the Secretary of State's office and put it into the Board of Elections, and add a member to the Board of Elections who would be a minority member. Having a partisan elected official in charge of elections just isn't a good look, and it can be very dangerous. And so having a nonpartisan Board of Elections, we already have a Board of Elections, have them be the supervisors of election and have it make sure that it's a nonpartisan body is a reform that I have championed. I've advanced it. It got put in the Speaker's drawer, so it didn't get very far, but I'm going to try again. I think it's an important issue, and I will continue to work on it.
Thank you. I'm sorry that we ran out of time for all of the other questions, but could you join me in a round of applause for all of our candidates and their willingness? I have a few last-minute announcements, and then we have mingle with the candidates time for until about 9 o'clock. So the first date coming up is early voting. It starts on October 8th. And you might want to wait because on October 10th, we'll have the forum for city council candidates. So you might want to wait until before you cast your ballot. You do you. The boomerang insert will also come out on October 12th. So stay tuned for that. The insert where you have the answers to a bunch of other questions to get to know candidates and issues will be there. All of the recordings for this forum and other ones will be posted on the Albany County website, the City of Laramie TV, the library. They're going to be everywhere. It's going to go viral. Election Day is November 5th. Make sure you're registered. Make sure you show up and vote whenever and however that works for you. And please enjoy mingling with candidates after the forum here. And there's literature for this race and other races over on the side if you want to pick up information about any other candidates. All right. Thank you to the League and the library for hosting. Thank you to the candidates for showing up. Thank you to you all for showing up and everybody online. Have a great night. Thank you so much.